Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
Every year, like clockwork, the family dragged folding chairs from their garages, threw cheap paper plates in a box, and called it tradition. Uncle Dave would haul out that rusty old grill like it was sacred, slapping frozen burger patties on the grate like he was Bobby Flay. The kids ran around barefoot, the teens stared into their phones, and the adults clustered into loose camps, drinking beer, sharing gossip, or pretending they weren't eavesdropping. The same playlist looped Brooks and Dunn, Garth Brooks, maybe a little Toby Keith if Dave got bold, and someone always brought potato salad, so sweet it should have been dessert. It was, on the surface, exactly the same as it had been 10 years ago. But this time, I wasn't the same person showing up. I pulled up in my new black SUV, windows down, music low, sunglasses on like armor. I parked next to Cousin Ricky's rusty Ford that looked like it had been rear-ended by life itself. It wasn't about showing off, but I could already feel the looks before I even stepped out of the car. The same looks I'd gotten since I left this town. Since I got out. Since I became the one who thinks they're better. I'd barely made it past the welcome table, that folding plastic monstrosity that had seen more potlucks than a church basement, when I saw her. Aunt Brenda. Still thin in that brittle way that came from chain-smoking more than self-discipline. Bleach blonde hair teased up like it was still 1989. She was holding a styrofoam cup of cheap boxed wine like it was a damn trophy, her lipstick already bleeding into the cracks at the corners of her mouth. "Oh, look who's here," she sneered loud enough for half the yard to hear. Big Shot finally made time for the poor folks. She always came in hot, and today was no different. I just gave her a nod, the kind of nod you give a wasp before you swat it. But I stayed calm. I wasn't here to fight. I was here because Grandma asked me to be. She loved this shit, this whole circus, and she wanted one nice day without drama. Joke was on her. This family couldn't go 10 minutes without drama. "How's the city life treating you?" Brenda called after me as I headed toward the grill. "Bet you don't even eat meat no more, huh? Lettuce and lattes or whatever the hell rich people live on." I turned back, gave her a half smile. "Still love a burger, Brenda. Just prefer mine without attitude." She didn't like that. I could see her jaw clench like she was chewing on a grudge she'd been saving since I graduated college. I made it to the grill, fist-bumped Dave, nodded at Ricky, who was already halfway into a beer he didn't need, and tried to relax. But the tension followed me like humidity. I could feel Brenda circling, waiting to sink her teeth in. I was plating a burger when she finally did it, dropped the line she'd clearly been saving since she saw me step out of the SUV. "You think you're better than us just 'cause you make more money?" She said it like a joke, but her voice had that sharp edge. The one people use when they pretend they're kidding, but really they want blood. I didn't flinch. I turned, looked her square in the eye, and smiled like I was enjoying myself. "No," I said, slow and calm, like I was reading a bedtime story. "I think I'm better because I pay my own damn bills." There was a pause. Then someone laughed, maybe Ricky, maybe Dave. A couple of cousins snickered, and one of the in-laws actually said, "Oof." Brenda's face went red, not just from wine or sunburn. Real red. Fury red. But the real blow hadn't landed yet. That came a beat later when Ricky, still holding his drink, still slightly swaying, pointed at me and shouted loud enough to shut down every side conversation in the yard. "Wait, hold up. You pay for Grandma's rent too." Time stopped. The laughter dried up mid-breath. Someone dropped a plastic fork. Even the wind seemed to pause like it wanted to hear what came next. I looked at Ricky, then at Grandma, who was sitting in her favorite lawn chair by the tree line. Her hands were clasped tight in her lap, her gaze fixed on the dirt like it might save her. I didn't say a word. Not yet. My face didn't move, not even when I noticed Brenda looking at me, then looking at Grandma, her mouth half open like she wasn't sure if she was about to laugh or throw up. How the hell did Ricky know? I hadn't told anyone. Not my friends, not my coworkers, not even the bank teller who cashed the checks. I paid Grandma's rent every month, in full, and I did it quietly because that's what she asked for. No pride parade, no family drama, just help. But now, the whole damn barbecue was staring at me like I'd just confessed to murder. And Grandma, she still wouldn't meet my eyes. There are moments in life when something shifts just a tiny click, like the sound of a gun cocking or a bone popping out of place, and you know nothing's ever going back to how it was. That's what this was. One sentence from a drunk cousin, and the air went cold. Because if Ricky knew, who else did? And if no one else knew, how the hell did he find out? I looked down at the burger on my plate, suddenly tasteless. Grandma still hadn't moved. But something in her eyes said this story was just getting started. You don't set out thinking you're going to be the one who ends up covering your grandmother's rent. It just kind of happens when the math of life stops adding up and someone's got to step in before the whole thing collapses. It was 4 Christmases ago, and I remember the weather was bitter. One of those deep snap freezes where the cold gets into your bones and makes the house creak like it's haunted. Grandma had made her usual dry ham, the kind that needed 3 gulps of sweet tea just to swallow. We were sitting in the living room after everyone else had gone home, the lights on the fake tree flickering like they were losing the will to keep pretending. That's when I noticed the stack of envelopes half-tucked under a magazine on the coffee table, yellowed, thick, stamped with red ink like someone had bled frustration across every corner. I didn't open them at first. I just asked her about them gently, as you would someone whose dignity you still hoped to preserve. She waved me off, said it was just a little behind on the rent, nothing she couldn't handle after the new year rolled in. But I saw her eyes twitch when she said it, like the words tasted like regret. Later that night, while she was in the kitchen loading up the tinfoil trays with leftovers for me to take home, I looked at the top one. It was a 3-day notice to pay or quit. She was more than 2 months behind, and the amount was nearly $2,000. That meant she'd probably been scraping for even longer than that, maybe borrowing money she didn't want to talk about, maybe going without medicine or groceries just to keep the lights on and a roof overhead. I didn't ask for permission. I just started sending a check. $950 every month, straight to the landlord. I even called the property manager myself, told him not to mention who was paying it, just to make sure it all went through without a hitch. Grandma never brought it up again, and neither did I. I figured if her pride couldn't bear asking for help, the least I could do was let her pretend she was still doing it all on her own. No lectures, no grand gestures, just quiet support. That's the thing nobody tells you about being the successful one in the family. It's not about yachts or vacations or some smug sense of superiority. Sometimes it just means you get the privilege of cleaning up everybody else's mess without expecting a damn thank you. So when Ricky dropped that bombshell at the barbecue, my stomach turned like it had been kicked. Because if he knew, then something had gone sideways, someone talked, or someone snooped, or Grandma slipped up. And sure enough, the silence broke like a bottle smashing on pavement, with Brenda scoffing so loud you'd think she just caught me embezzling from a church fund. "You did that for attention," she snapped, slurring just a bit, the wine on her breath heavy and bitter. "You always want to look like the goddamn hero." I turned slowly, not giving her the satisfaction of rising to her drama, just calmly saying what needed to be said. "Nah," I said, "I just don't want her evicted. Unlike you, I check my voicemail." A couple heads turned. Somebody even snorted into their drink. But Brenda wasn't backing down. Her voice pitched higher, brittle and sharp, like glass about to crack. "Must be nice, huh? Play the martyr while the rest of us struggle just to keep our own bills paid." I shrugged. "It is nice, actually. Feels better than pretending everything's fine while Grandma's getting pink slips in her mailbox." And then, just as things were heating up enough for someone to grab a beer and settle in for the show, Ricky, God bless his lack of timing, dropped the second grenade of the day. Wait, he said, looking around like he'd just put 2 and 2 together and gotten a banana. "Then what's Dad doing with the money he said goes to Grandma's rent?" That hit harder than it should have. For a second, No one moved. Brenda blinked like she'd been slapped with a cold rag. A couple of chairs creaked as people leaned forward, waiting to see if anyone, was going to play it off like a joke. But Uncle Dave, standing near the grill with a fresh burger in one hand and a dripping spatula in the other, suddenly looked like someone had drained all the color from his face. "Ricky," he muttered, trying to chuckle like he was about to tell a story we'd all misheard. "Don't be starting, nah," Ricky cut him off, stepping closer, his voice a little louder now. "You told me last year you were sending money to help Grandma with rent. You said you and Aunt Sharon pitched in $300 a month, remember? You even asked me and Becca to chip in." He turned to the group, pointing with his beer like it was a mic. "We gave him $2,000 last year." 2,000. Now people were standing. Someone gasped. One of the cousins dropped her paper plate on the ground. The air around us felt thick, like you could cut it into blocks and stack it like cinder. I said nothing, just crossed my arms and stared at Dave. He was sweating now. The burger still sizzling behind him, forgotten. His lips moved like he was trying to conjure up a lie that wouldn't sound like one. But it was too late. That kind of hesitation speaks louder than a confession. Grandma was still in her chair under the tree, but now she was looking up, her face pale and tight, her eyes darting between Dave and me like she was bracing for something. And I saw it then, something in her face that scared me more than anything Brenda could throw at me. It wasn't shame or guilt. It was the look of someone who already knew what we were about to find out. The yard had gone full funeral quiet, and for once even Brenda didn't have a comeback. Uncle Dave opened his mouth to speak, but all he managed was a weak, "Look, I can explain." No one wanted to hear it. Not yet. And Grandma, she still hadn't said a word. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a plate or call him a thief or cause some Jerry Springer-style explosion that would have given Brenda the satisfaction of calling me dramatic. I just looked at Uncle Dave with that same tired, heavy stare I'd used 100 times before in boardrooms and bullshit meetings right before someone got fired. His mouth opened, then closed again, his hand still holding that spatula like it might shield him from the questions spinning around his head. Everyone else had gone quiet, which was saying something for a family gathering where shouting over each other was basically our love language. $500 a month, I said, my voice calm, even casual, like I was talking about the weather. That's what you told them? That's what you said went toward Grandma's rent. Dave shifted from one foot to the other like the lawn had started heating up beneath him. Well, I mean, yeah, he muttered, his eyes darting to Brenda like she might step in and bail him out. She said she didn't need much. I figured the rest helped with stuff. Stuff, I repeated, nodding slowly, like I was writing it down. That's an expensive category, Dave. Must be real flexible. Ricky stepped forward, face red with alcohol and rage, and pointed again, his voice cracking just enough to make it real. You took money from me. You said it was for Grandma. I gave you my tax refund, man. Brenda, of course, couldn't stay quiet long. She shot in from the side like a mosquito drawn to blood. Okay, let's just calm down here. Dave was trying to help, all right? He's got bills too. He's got mouths to feed. Who the hell are you feeding for $500 a month besides yourself? Ricky snapped. Because I sure as hell didn't see you paying Grandma's light bill when she had to use a damn fan heater last winter. It was like someone pulled the thread that had been holding the whole backyard together. Suddenly, everyone was talking. Cousin Janet started asking questions, throwing side eyes toward Dave and Brenda. Her husband muttered something about how he always knew something was off. One of the uncles wandered off toward the cooler like maybe this was all too much for a Sunday afternoon. And through all of it, Grandma just sat there under that big oak tree, in the same lawn chair she'd brought to every barbecue since the 90s, hands folded tight in her lap, her gaze fixed on some invisible point just beyond the chaos. I walked away. I didn't slam my plate down, didn't curse or throw shade. I just walked over to the cooler, pulled out a lukewarm beer, cracked it open, and stepped up onto the porch like it was the only place in the world that wasn't on fire. Grandma looked up when she heard the creak of the old wooden steps. Her eyes were glassy, but her face didn't move much. "You knew," I said quietly, not a question, not even an accusation. She nodded once, almost like she didn't want me to notice. "I knew," she whispered, her voice dry like old leaves. "I let him do it. I didn't want to be a burden." The gut punch landed square. Not from her words exactly, but from the quiet in them. Like she'd accepted this long before any of us figured it out. I sat beside her, not too close, not touching, just near enough that she'd feel I wasn't angry with her. Not really. I was angry with everything else. "All these years," I said, staring out at the yard where our family was slowly breaking into factions like some suburban Game of Thrones. "I've been covering her rent. Every damn month. And the rest of them? They've been feeding money to Dave like he's some kind of savior." He told them she was fine, Grandma murmured, her lips barely moving. "Said she didn't want visitors. Said she didn't need help." "Why didn't you say something?" I asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it anyway. She looked down at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "Because if they knew I needed help, they'd blame me. If they knew you were helping, they'd blame you. This way, they just blamed each other." It was like she'd been living inside a secret and didn't realize how loud the walls had gotten. I pulled my phone from my pocket and typed out a text. Short, precise. "Pull the bank records I showed you. I might finally need them tonight." The silence between us sat heavy like a third person on the porch. Behind us, I could hear the voices rising again. Brenda defending Dave, Ricky threatening to leave, someone else crying quietly near the picnic table like they'd just realized how deep the rot had gone. "You're not a burden," I said finally. Grandma's lips pulled into a small, sad smile. "You're the only one who ever said that." I sat back, took a long drink from the beer, and watched as the perfect picture of family unity continued to unravel in slow, deliberate threads. They always said family sticks together, but nobody ever said anything about what happens when the glue turns out to be a lie. The bank records would show every rent payment, every check, every transaction with my name on it and hers on the memo line. And once they saw the numbers, the questions would get bigger, meaner, sharper. Because if I'd been paying the whole time, then what the hell had Dave been doing with all that money? And why the hell had no one else ever noticed? There was no saving face now, no way to patch this up with a prayer and a few cheap beers. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was theft. And worse, it was betrayal from the inside, wrapped in family ties and dipped in silence. The lies were out. The burgers were getting cold. And I had the bank statements to finish the job. By the time I came back down off the porch, the backyard had turned into a full-blown courtroom without the benefit of walls or a judge. People stood in clusters, arms crossed, eyebrows raised, beer bottles dangling from loose fingers like they were waiting for a verdict that might ruin their day. Dave was pacing now, wiping his hands on his jeans like the grease from the grill could somehow cover up the guilt on his palms. Brenda hovered behind him like a backup singer waiting to jump in on the chorus of bullshit, and Ricky stood with his arms crossed, the beer can in his hand crushed and forgotten, crushed like whatever ounce of trust he'd managed to have left for his old man. I didn't make a show of it. I didn't wave the papers in the air or shout out some dramatic line like I was on a courtroom TV show. I just walked back into the yard, calm as you like, and handed Brenda a stapled packet of papers, clean, crisp, and devastating. Then I turned to Dave and gave him the same set. Printed copies. Dated. Labeled. Check numbers. Bank stamps. 48 months of rent payments. $950 every single month, like clockwork. Some checks, some online transfers, all of them real, all of them undeniable. "This is every rent payment for the last 4 years," I said, loud enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear. "Each one from my account. Not split. Not shared. Not covered by any of you. Just me." I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't need to. There's a certain volume in truth when it lands without apology, when it walks into a room wearing facts like armor. The air around us shifted like a thunderhead had rolled in without warning. Brenda flipped through the papers with those sharp acrylic nails of hers, her lips tightening with every page. Dave didn't even open his. He just stared at me, eyes wide, hands twitching like he wanted to say something but knew nothing would fix it now. Ricky looked like something in him had cracked clean in two. "You let me give you $6,000 last year," he barked, his voice catching on the edge of rage and something softer, hurt, betrayal, disbelief. $6,000. While you were lying to my face. Dave tried. God knows he tried. "I didn't lie," he muttered. I didn't know Jordan was doing all that." "The hell you didn't," Ricky shouted, stepping forward. "You said she was fine. You said we had to help so she wouldn't lose her place. You told me it was you keeping her from the damn street." And just when I thought maybe the worst of it was done, Brenda pivoted like the pro she was, turning the blame so fast you'd think she trained in sleight of hand. "Well," she said with a loud sigh, "maybe Jordan manipulated her into taking that money. You know how they always gotta feel superior. Always gotta swoop in and play the savior. Like we're all just a bunch of helpless trash compared to their big city lifestyle." A couple of heads turned at that. Not everyone agreed, but nobody stepped in either. That's how Brenda worked. She planted doubt like weeds, fast and low, so they spread before anyone noticed they'd been rooted. I looked at her, and for once I didn't bite my tongue. "Manipulated?" I said, my voice colder now. "You think I manipulated her? I paid rent. Quietly. Without saying a word to any of you. You want to know what manipulation looks like? It's what you did, letting Dave lie through his teeth while you sat back and played blind. It's guilt-tripping your own mother for not coming to your Christmas potluck while she was sitting in a dark apartment with no heat." Brenda's lips curled like she wanted to spit. "You left," she hissed. "You left us. You act like you're too good to stay in this damn town. And that was it. That was the match on the gas. Because I am too good for this town," I snapped, no longer holding back the venom in my voice. "I had to crawl out while you stayed and drowned in your excuses. Every single one of you had the same shot I did. I just didn't wait for someone to hand it to me on a damn paper plate." A hush dropped like a heavy sheet, covering the backyard in something heavier than heat. The music had stopped somewhere along the way. No one was pretending this was still a party anymore. Even the kids had stopped yelling and started watching the adults like they'd stumbled onto a scene from a show they were too young to understand. And then came the voice I hadn't heard all day, soft, aged, and soaked in something deeper than tired. "You want the truth?" Grandma said, rising from her chair like it cost her everything just to stand. Her voice didn't tremble, but it didn't need to be loud. The yard turned to her like the wind itself stopped just to listen. "Fine," she said, her eyes wet, her jaw set. "Y'all ain't ready." And in that moment, the silence didn't just return, it roared. Because whatever was coming next, we all knew it wasn't going to be anything we were prepared to hear. It was the kind of silence that didn't happen often in our family, not the kind born from comfort or peace, but the stunned, breath-held pause that creeps in right after the floor gives out and nobody's quite ready to fall. Grandma's voice cut through the tension like a razor through thick rope, not because it was loud or forceful, but because it carried a weight none of us could ignore anymore. She stood in that old blue house dress she wore every Sunday, the hem swaying gently against her shins, her shoulders hunched slightly from years of carrying more than anyone ever saw. "I ain't got much left in me," she said, her voice dry but steady, "so if I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna say it all." Brenda took a step forward, her eyes darting between me and Dave like she was calculating the emotional cost of whatever was about to come out. But even she didn't interrupt, not this time. Something in Grandma's tone had slapped all the pettiness straight out of the air. Dave was looking down at the grass like it held the answers, and Ricky was pacing near his truck, rubbing his forehead like he was fighting off a headache that had started 10 years ago and never fully let go. "I didn't just take money for rent," Grandma said, and her eyes landed right on me. "Jordan helped with more than that. Food, meds, electric bills. Even gave me $2,000 once when Brenda's car got repoed. The color drained so fast from Brenda's face I thought she might pass out. She opened her mouth, maybe to deny it or maybe to lash out, but nothing came. Her lips just hung there, trembling with the weight of being exposed. She was behind 3 months, Grandma continued, not cruelly, not with judgment, just facts laid bare like old receipts. Said it would ruin her credit and she couldn't get to work. She cried in my kitchen, right there by the sink. Jordan wired me the money that same day. I didn't say a word. I just chewed on the last bite of my burger, which now tasted like dust and irony. I'd told myself I was doing it to keep things quiet, to hold the fragile fabric of the family together, but standing there watching faces contort in shame and disbelief, I couldn't tell if I was the one who'd fixed things or the one who'd made it easier for everyone to keep lying. And it wasn't just Brenda, Grandma went on, now staring straight into the soul of the entire backyard. Y'all ever wonder how I got that new fridge last spring? That wasn't magic. It was Jordan. Same with my teeth when my top plate cracked 2 winters ago. And those hospital bills when I had that pneumonia spell, what do you think covered that? Medicare? Please. Someone near the table cursed under their breath. Ricky finally stopped pacing and just stood there staring at his dad, who still hadn't moved, still hadn't looked up, like if he didn't lift his eyes, maybe the shame couldn't find him. Why didn't you tell us? One of the cousins asked, barely a whisper, but loud enough to be heard. Because Jordan made me promise, Grandma said, now looking at me again, this time not with accusation, but with something older, something like sadness. Said it would embarrass everyone if they knew. Said it was better to just keep it quiet. Said family pride was a funny thing, you could have none of it and still lose it. I finally set my plate down on the table, empty now except for a pickle slice and a smear of mustard that felt weirdly poetic. I didn't say anything because there was nothing left to defend. It was all out in the open, every ugly detail, every debt covered, every secret purchased and wrapped in silence. I had done what I thought was right, but in doing it so quietly, I'd given them all away to keep pretending everything was fine. And just when I thought it couldn't get heavier, when the ashtray of this barbecue couldn't get more full of resentment and smoldering regret, Grandma dropped the last match. But don't think Jordan did it out of love, she said, her voice now sharp enough to stop hearts. It was guilt. Guilt over what happened to Billy. The name hit like a body being dropped onto concrete. Billy, my younger brother. Gone 10 years now. And still, we didn't say his name. Not out loud. Not like that. No one moved. No one breathed. Billy had died in a car crash one summer when we were both still barely figuring out who we were supposed to be. He was 17. I was 20. He had called me the night he died, asked if I could pick him up from that party on the west side, but I let it go to voicemail. I was busy. With work. With life. With getting out of town and not looking back. I told myself he was fine. He could call Dad or someone else. He never called anyone else. They found him the next morning wrapped around a tree 2 blocks from that house. I looked up at Grandma, the whole yard spinning a little too fast. You told me that wasn't my fault, I said quietly. I lied, she said. Because I thought it would help you sleep. Brenda sat down hard on a bench like her knees gave out. Ricky looked like he wanted to punch something. Dave, finally, looked up, but not at me. At Grandma. At the truth he'd hidden behind for so long. There were no fireworks that year. No family group photo on the front lawn. No awkward jokes about next time, or we should do this more often. Just people walking slowly to their cars, avoiding each other's eyes, loading coolers back into trunks like they were packing up the wreckage of a war nobody admitted they were fighting. I got into my SUV and didn't turn the engine on right away. I just sat there, staring at the dash, listening to the echo of a name that still tasted like blood in my mouth. I thought I could fix it all with money. Turns out, some debts don't have a dollar amount. My phone buzzed as I pulled onto the road, the sun already starting to dip low over the trees behind me. It was Grandma. Her message was short. Come see me. There's more you don't know. And just like that, I knew the story wasn't finished. Not yet.